Good afternoon, everybody. My name is, so just to refresh, I hope you are not sleepy. I saw some of the sleepy faces. So my name is Kristina Rodina. I'm a Forestry Officer managing the Wildlife and Protected Area Management Program in FAO Forestry Department. So what I'm going to do today is to bring you a little bit from the, thank you, just one. From the very interesting presentation Andrew and Jeff introduced from the field level, a little bit more on the regional and international level, and explain what we do, give you some examples, and then allow for some questions. So I'll try to be very short. So let me first start by saying where the Wildlife and Protected Area Management Program actually sits in the Forestry Department. And by saying wildlife and protected areas, so in the Forestry Department we see these two portfolios as one very important one. So we don't consider them as two different programs and try to find synergies and work on wildlife management inside protected areas and outside. And I will later show you the scope of the program and what exactly we are talking about. So I hope you already saw early this morning the structure of the department. So a wildlife program is based on the Forest Research Management Program, which is one of the teams. When it comes to how long we've been here in the Forestry Department and what the program actually is about, the program and the activities on wildlife, it goes back to the 1960s when the ad hoc working group on wildlife management was established on the margins of FAO's African Forestry and Wildlife Commission. Have you heard of the forestry commissions early this morning, or should I give you a few words? Huh? Peter? So yeah, African Wildlife and Forestry Commission, this is only one commission that have a wildlife in its title. So comparing to the Asian Pacific Commission, it has only forestry in its title. And maybe for this reason, at the moment, we don't have so many ongoing activities in Asia. However, we should, I think, because wildlife management, you know much better than me, it's a very big issue, and particularly in India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, where I was working before. So this is something that we should definitely consider in the future. As you can see from the slide, the work, I think, has been very different in terms of field activities and normative work. So we've implemented over 200 projects related to sustainable use and conservation of wildlife resources, protected area management in more than 85 countries. And later from 90s, I think the number of field activities reduced, and based on the member states' request, we started working more on, we call it normative work. So designing and developing more guidances, reference text materials, and working more on a policy level. And at the moment, the program I'm coordinating is very focused, I think, on its international level, and there is more policy-related activities rather than the field activity, even though we have some big programs, and I will introduce a few of them. This is to give you a very brief snapshot of the program, and I'm sure you will get the presentations later so you can see it in more details. But by this slide, what I would like you to show is that the program has very diverse activities and milestones, starting from practical tools we've developed, for example, to mitigate human-wildlife conflict, then going to the big flagship publications like UNISILVA on sustainable wildlife management, and thematic products we produce together with other partners, and also the big events we are part of, either the co-organizers or participants, and the big milestone projects like Sustainable Wildlife Management Program that I will manage in a short while, and a very big program in Latin America, which is called IAPA, together with Red Parques. So the portfolio is quite diverse, and the program now is on the stage when I'm trying to develop something that Jeff showed you, the theory of change. So we are reflecting on the recent comment of the colleague who mentioned that the wildlife management should be also addressed in the social forestry. This is something that we are now trying to work on to see how wildlife and protected area management actually should be integrated in other parts of the forestry, including social forestry, forestry management, and any other relevant thematic areas. So regarding the scope, what we actually do and what is the wildlife for us in the Forestry Department. So wildlife includes all vertebrate terrestrial animals in all geographical zones. So we work globally, and we work on everything except fish, because we have our fisheries department. And the same comes about protected areas. So for us, protected areas, we do work and define protected areas as IUCN. And the Forestry Department, we only work on terrestrial protected areas. So marine protected areas, this is something beyond our mandate. And as I mentioned already, wildlife and protected area management is understood, and as a vision for us, it's a conservation and sustainable use of wildlife resources inside and outside protected areas for the benefits of forest-dependent people in local communities. So this is our long-term mission. At the moment, we have 4 main thematic areas. We have 4 broad thematic areas, and we don't consider them as one separate area, so they're all very interlinked, and because of there's a lot of connections. For example, the first one is sustainable use of wild meat. So I will call it an FAO in our international process, we call it wild meat. We don't call it bush meat, because bush meat is a very, as you might know, is a very African term. So the wild meat, this is a now commonly agreed term in the CBD and CITES conventions. This is the first very big thematic area, and a lot of work has been done in Africa. The second one is coexistence of humans and animals, and here the human-wildlife conflict is a very big part of it, including addressing conflict, preventing, mitigating, and looking at the conflict, a different type of the conflicts. Either it's livestock predation, crop destruction, or transmission of diseases, and many other types. The third one, very cross-cutting and linked with the social forestry work. This is a community-based management, it's community wildlife and protected areas management, and sustainable livelihoods. And the last one mostly has been done in Latin America. This is when it comes to protected area management. This is management effectiveness, ecological representative of protected areas, governance, and tenure. A few words how our work is guided in Africa. So the work is guided through the African Wildlife, Forestry and Wildlife Commission. So this is for us very important, the most important continental dialogue, where we meet with the member countries to discuss a number of forestry and wildlife related issues. Just to tell you that the wildlife issues, they're quite diverse every 2 years. The Commission meets every 2 years, and in Africa we have 51 member countries. When we meet, the dialogue is quite diverse depending on what are the requests, and recently the issue of human-wildlife conflicts has been very prominently discussed. And I think also I'm very delighted to see you and to speak to you, because I know that you have, guys, human-wildlife conflict as a very big issue in the country, and I'm sure you will even teach me something that I don't know. So this is very, it's great for me to be here. Then when it comes to the outcomes of the Commission, so we have got recommendations, and then the work, the work we do, we need to report back. So the next section of the Commission, for your information, would be later this year, by the end of the year, where we'll need to present and to see what the progress has been made, and also to see what the countries has done, the human-wildlife conflict, transboundary community, wildlife management, and other issues. Going further, this is just to illustrate you the type of support we provided to address human-wildlife conflict. As an example, this is, I took Africa, where the majority work has been done. So the first broad type of support we provided, I call it the policy-related, so for example, in Mozambique, in Gabon, we supported government to develop their human-wildlife conflict mitigation or prevention strategy and the action plan. The second type of support, I call it as more designing and developing practical tools and guidance and toolkits. And for example, one of them I'll show you next slide, but this is just to show a very old one. For local communities, maybe Eduardo, you know it very well, so we could. So kind of this type of local communities that work very well, because it's very easy to teach them, and it's very easy to, so it doesn't require mobile phones and any other tools. And basically what we did, it's a training of trainers, so we can train NGO, for example, in India, and then the NGO can teach local communities, so we don't need to be there all the time. And the last one, the type of support when it comes to field activities and projects. So currently we have a few projects, for example, in Botswana, and in Zimbabwe and Zambia, supporting the local communities with the conflict mitigation or prevention. So the next slide is about toolkit, just to give you a few more insights what this toolkit is about. The toolkit basically is quite easy to use, very easy friendly. First of all, you can see what type of animal you have, and then you will have a certain type of solution. So the toolkit has 16 problematic areas. It has 5 different situations of environment. For example, it could be relevant to livestock, to water, to people. And then based on this, toolkit will guide you what kind of solutions, low cost effective, low cost, high cost, type of solution you will provide depending on your situation. At the moment, so toolkit is very crop oriented. For example, it doesn't include the disease transmission issue, which is also quite, I think, prominent type of conflict. When it comes to ongoing projects and field initiative, is going further from the conflict and coming to the wild meat. Currently, we have a very big program, which is a consortium of 4 partners, including FAO, C4, CIRAT, and WCS. So the program was launched in 2017, and the program is looking at reducing the unsustainable hunting practices, the sustainable level, conserving biodiversity, and also including the endangered species, and providing alternative sources of protein for the communities, forest-dependent communities, and also the poor communities who need it. The countries include, it's mostly, it's ACP countries, so the Africa, Asia, and Caribbean countries, and we have most of the countries are in Africa, you can see in the slides, but also we have one country in Asia, it's Papua New Guinea, and one country in Latin America, which is Guyana. The program is interesting for the several reasons. First of all, on the right side of the slide, you can see. So we work on the 3 different levels. First of all, we work on the village level, so where people are really highly dependent on the wild meat. The wild meat is only available source of protein for them. The second level, we call it secondary or provincial town. It means that there is still lack of alternative source of protein, and people are, or maybe the markets are quite far, so the people don't have options to either than go and hunt and consume wild meat from the forest. And the last one, it's urban centers, cities. Here people, even though they have a lot of alternatives, they do consume wild meat as a luxury good. And actually there was an interesting study that the higher price for bushmeat or wild meat, the people still more consume it. So it's not about money, it's about, in many cases, prestige and something that they will still do. So here we also, it comes to the behavioral change and attitude when it comes to in the urban centers, not in the village centers, because people don't have alternatives. So this is quite, so it's a new program. Its activities has started last year, and now we are working on different pilot sites and different model and testing different situations. So soon you will see some results. Another very big part of the wildlife and predatory management program, this is working with different partners. Maybe just a quick question, have you ever heard of this partnership, which is called Collaborative Partnership on Sustainable Wildlife Management? No one? No, this is just for my information. No one? Yeah, no. So this is, so this partnership, this is a quite new partnership, and it has, so it's a, first of all, I might say, it's a voluntary partnership, meaning that we have 14 international organizations including 3 conventions, CITES, CMS, and CBD, and many other international organizations like IUCN, Traffic, IID, UNEP, World Animal Organization, many others. So the idea of the partnership, we do work on the international level. So this is not a field type of activity, and very often I receive the requests from local NGOs, including in Asia and Africa, asking how we can work with a partnership. So, and very often I must say that, this is a very different type, and what we do is we promote the sustainable use message. So the partnership is not about the conservation, it's mostly about how we use wildlife sustainably, and there are 4 main topics. So one of them is wildlife when it comes to food security and livelihood, very big component, which is very relevant for FAO. The second one is unsustainable hunting practices in illegal wildlife trade. The third one brings us back to the human-wildlife conflict. And the last one, animal and human health. So I brought some copies you will see there in coffee break. So this is very brief thematic policy or information brief to produce about very different topics, either it's human-wildlife conflict, biodiversity and wildlife management, animal health, gender, that later will feed the inform international community about what's happening and what still needs to be learned and what are the issues. This is one type of activity. The second type of activity, and also I think Eduardo, you were there in 2015 in Durban, where there was a first CPW Wildlife Forum. So recently, last year in November, we organized the second Wildlife Forum in CBD COP in Egypt. So this was, the forum for us is a very, so this is an outreach event where we have very different, we have governments because they do attend COP, we have international community, NGOs, donors, so very different stakeholders that also inform us what CPW can do and beyond post-2020 biodiversity agenda that is now very discussed international level. And also this type of forum gives us the opportunity to launch different products. For example, on the picture you'll see recently, as a partnership we developed, led by FAO, the animation video. So the link is provided and you can see it later. It's 3 minutes animation video about what we do, very short, so without producing brochure. We also focus on very targeted, innovative communication products. So at the moment we're also working in the partnership on developing the long-term vision. So what exactly we do, how we influence the governments, also including in Asia and Africa and Europe, everywhere, that the sustainable use of wildlife is literally in its taking, and the countries really take necessary steps to either revise the policies or they implement more effective laws. And the last slide, just to give you where we are right now and what are the plans at least for this year and for next year. So in 2019, we're currently working on formulating the program, including the wildlife management. This is not a standalone program. So we are well integrated in a social forestry team. We're well integrated in other teams of the Forestry Department. For this exercise, we need to do the theory of change exercise, or we can call it a log frame. So this is where we are right now. And the second one is, the idea is to revive and to strengthen our work on human-wildlife conflict at this moment in Africa. But I think that we should also move to Asia, because there is a lot of issues there, and I think also that Asia could provide us different set of solutions. And I think so Africa and Asian region can learn from each other. And the third one, this is more enhancing and improving our communication outreach, because there is not so many people know that FAO is working on wildlife and protected areas, and this is an important part for us, at least to make sure that FAO also has a niche which relates to food security, and there is this program. And there's a couple of milestones. We plan some big cross-sectoral ministerial activities in Africa, also the activities and meetings of the partnership, and of course the African Commission, which will happen end of the year and will help us to guide the work for the next couple of years. And at the end, so links where you'll find it's a key references. You will get a presentation, so all the links you can access. Thank you very much.
My name is Nitish Kumar. I belong to eastern part of India. So your major work has been concentrated in Africa. Has FAO worked in challenges which is closely related to India, where there is no allowance for hunting for the meat, because we have a strict no-no for any type of hunting? So your toolkit, which you are mentioning, is it customized for India as well?
Thank you for your question. I think the toolkit I mentioned is mostly related to human-wildlife conflict, so not necessarily meat-related. So I think the hunting for meat, this is a different, hunting for meat requires different types of solutions. So this toolkit is literally for communities when you have a conflict and you don't know what to do. So this is really to train, for local managers to train people. So the toolkit mostly addresses, as I mentioned, it's a crop destruction, which is one of the major types of conflict nowadays worldwide, and I think in India it's also will be the case. And it has also particular type of animals, so not necessarily related to meat. When it comes to hunting for meat, I think the program I mentioned, which is called Sustainable Wildlife Management Program. So the program has the selected countries, and in each country we have a pilot site. So you have really little small of land where we're testing certain models. And I think there, in number of years, because now we are working on methodologies and surveys, in number of years, the idea of this program that when you have results in Africa, they could be, upscaled and replicable for Asia. So it's not only, it won't be Africa focused. So in a number of years, I believe that we can apply it to India or to any other country in Asia with a similar, but what's important, with a similar political and socio-economic context, because it also plays an important role.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Anand. It's not a question, it's a kind of information. It's what FAO and world can learn from India in terms of wildlife management. Actually, the problems faced by India in terms of human-animal conflict is immense compared to any other part of the world. We have carnivores, we have herbivores, and we have all kind of pressures. And we have people living inside the forest, and there is 18% of the people who are living inside the forest. When world is moving towards sustainable management of wild meat, India has completely banned any type of hunting, even for the tribal people who consider hunting as their right. For an example, I want to cite an example from northeastern part of the country, where the guys, to marry a girl, they have to hunt a Amur falcon, and they have to wear a hat made up of the beak of the Amur falcon. Government successfully intervened, and they have collaborated with the local people, and they have replaced that Amur falcon bill with some synthetic material, and that particular tribal people, they left the custom of hunting. And there are a lot of tribal people who still perform ritual hunting. Ritual hunting in the sense, for a particular part of a year, to perform certain customs or rituals, they have to hunt. And those tribals, they consider it as a right. So having all the problems, India successfully banned any type of hunting in the country. To hunt a single animal, a person, he has to get a permission from highest level of the forest bureaucrat. And second thing, where India is aspiring for help in terms of wildlife management is in the area of wildlife crime. Wildlife crime, yes, India is situated in the hotspot where India at times act as a transit point or at times act as a source for the wildlife contrabands. So we need help from the international forums to stop or prevent wildlife crime. So what's the program or what's the role that FOA is playing in preventing or stopping wildlife crime?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for your questions and enriching information.
I think to cut this question
Sure.
very short, I think he wants to know from you what are the activities of FAO in India with regard to that, with regard to wildlife management or prevention. India is not expert. Anyway.
Yeah, I'll just try to be short. So because I'm asked this question about the wildlife trade, illegal wildlife trade very often. This is not, to be sure, this is not FAO's mandate to work on illegal wildlife trade. I'm coming from, if you know Traffic, who know Traffic organization. I've worked for Traffic for 6 years. So I'm coming from the illegal, and I worked in Myanmar before and in Southeast Asia. So we are asked, always in African countries are asking us, can you help us? But we only can do this through the partnership, through the CPW, because we have other partners with much better and stronger expertise. So we are, and at FAO, our niche is wildlife management in relation to food security, livelihood improvements. So illegal wildlife trade, this is not something that we have mandate to do. Just to be brief, to answer a question. And to answer broadly wildlife management, as I mentioned, in the future we should work in Asia. But at the moment, because the capacity, just a human capacity, so is not so many people working in FAO and wildlife, and we first build on African work and then we should go to you guys. So thank you.